Roster Rescue 7.0. If you want your roster rescued, get in the community. The link is in the description. You can jump in the Discord for free. You can observe and listen to the show as well, but you got to be a member of the Discord to get your roster rescued. I put out a thread. Put your team in there. I'll pick them randomly for each episode. So this is 7.0. We are going to do 7 teams today. First off, if you want a formal review with me, formal roster review, go to ddfantasyfootball.com. That's where you can get a link. There is a promo code, CHILL15, right here. I'll type it in so you can see it on the screen, CHILL15. Get you 15% off a review. You can do one with Shane and I. You can do a personal live or a recorded review with myself. But ddfantasyfootball.com, check it out. Jump in the community and get your roster rescued. So we're going to start off today with our team number 1. And this one comes from Soggy Danger. So we're going to get this team up. And this is a 12 by 11. Here is the team right here. It is a 12 by 11, 35 roster spots, 6 point per passing touchdown league, PPR scoring. It's an extra point or half a point for running back receptions, and it is an extra full point for tight end receptions. It's also first down bonuses. First thing I always do, if you haven't watched this show before, is I always go up here. I'm using Dynasty Daddy to go through these teams. Go up here where you see these bar graphs. Click this arrow, and it gives you the lineup setup. So I always look how many receivers. We always look at the receivers. In here, you have to start 2 tight ends. You're starting 3 receivers. So it's 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, 2 tight ends, 2 flexes, 1 super flex. So it is a start 11. 20-man rosters. Now, I'm assuming there's a taxi here because he says 35. So 12 by 11, 31-man rosters. First thing that stands out to me, 74 quarterbacks rostered. That's a lot. When this number's over 70, you pretty much already know people are onto the backup QB strategy. Tight ends, less tight ends rostered here in a 2 PPR and start 2 tight end league. So if we go down here, look at the scoring. I always go down and show the scoring settings, and you can see what these settings are. 6-1 for passing touchdowns, a bunch of bonuses. Honestly, I'm curious if anybody does anything with these bonuses. These seem to be very popular now in sleeper leagues. These 40-point or 40-yard plays, passing plays, rushing plays, completions, etc. I haven't really figured a way to make them actionable, so I pretty much just kind of chalk it up to the better players are going to get these types of plays more often, so it just kind of takes the better players and puts them even higher, a slight bump to all of the good players already. But I digress. Then you go down to first down bonuses. So every player, every position gets a extra half point for a first down. So go look at first down totals for players, and you'll notice that quarterbacks and running backs get the most first downs. So I look at those as typically those are going to benefit those positions a little bit more. But it's also 2 PPR for tight ends. It's an extra 1.5, or it's 1.5 for running back reception. So there's a lot going on here scoring-wise. Almost too much. So much that it's really hard to really decipher, like, okay, how do I want to play this from a specific player perspective? Because there's bonuses everywhere for every position. So we go over to the war. So the first thing, we know that this is a league where it's already 6-1, right? So we know it's 6-1 scoring. So first thing you want to look for, 6-1. Typically, it's just going to expand your pool a little bit for quarterbacks, and you can see that's true. I mean, the quarterback war, the density for the quarterbacks is higher than the other positions. So generally, your quarterbacks are going to score the most points in your league in general. Now, it's a start 11, so there's still 9 skill players. You know you're always going to want to start 2 QBs here, no matter what. In fact, that's true for most leagues. Probably 98% of leagues, you want to start 2 quarterbacks. I know I don't need to start a quarterback in the Superflex. Yes, you do. Optimal. Not, you don't have to. Nobody forces you to pick a QB in the Superflex. But optimally, most leagues you want to. Even if it's QB 21, you'd rather start that over your typical Superflex. And I don't want to hear, Breece Hall's in my Superflex. Well, if Breece Hall's in your Superflex, then your team's extremely top-heavy at non-QBs. But that's going to be the exception rather than the rule. So we know quarterback density is the highest. We also know with those first down bonuses, the completion bonuses, I saw extra points for 40 completions. Not that a player's going to get 40 completions that often, but 40-yard plays, first down bonuses, like just extra stuff for QBs to get, and QBs are going to do the most. So QBs are very important here. Let's get rid of QBs, though, because they really aren't competing with any of the other positions for your flex spots or the other positions themselves. Very interesting here, though. So when you look at the tight end scoring here, the tight end scoring, it's pretty relevant compared to the other positions. Obviously, the first down bonuses, the extra. You notice with this running back war, it's not point per carry. Actually, I maybe make sure it isn't point per carry. That's something I got to check. Everything else in here, you never know. I didn't see point per carry. Rushing attempts, no, there's no point per carry. But the extra half PPR for running backs is huge. You know, PPR already makes running backs more valuable, but then you add an extra half point for every running back catch. Think about that. That's not quite as powerful as 0.25 point per carry, but for certain running backs, that's huge. You know, the running backs that are catching 40, 50 passes, I mean, that's a lot of extra points. That's almost 2 points per game added above the receivers. So it's going to take all of these running backs, and let alone the first down bonuses as well. It's going to take all of these running backs, and it's just going to elevate them above the other two positions for flexes. And then you have the 2 PPR for tight ends. We know that when it's 2 PPR for tight ends, now here you have to start 2. So it changes this line a little bit because the starters are going to go all the way out to here. But even when you get down to here, even when you get down to these guys, so this is tight end 25 to 30. So that's going to be, quote unquote, that next 6 after the top 24, which if everything's balanced perfectly is going to be in your starting lineup. Those are still comparable to some of these receivers down here. The receivers are a little bit better. You know, you get down to your first flex range of receivers, they're a little bit higher than these tight ends, but not by much. So all in all, what it tells me about this team is I view tight ends and running backs as equal or superior flexes to receivers. You only have to start 3 receivers. Now, that doesn't mean receivers aren't valuable, but it means I'm going to be meticulous with how I build my receiver room. So we're going to start there. Here's what he says about his league. This team has earned the 101 3 straight years. It's time to make a push. I have some cornerstone assets along with some liquidity to move. I still need tight end and running back help on top of Genty, but with Love joining the squad. That's all he says. So clearly we know the running back power here. One thing that I notice is what's our plan at receiver? I already talked about receivers versus tight ends. They're occupying basically, you have 2 extra flexes here because you have to start 2 tight ends, right? So you have 2 extra flexes. But then running backs are the dominant flex outside of that. And so one thing I notice, we have way too many receivers. But here it is exaggerated. Here we are rostering, I would argue, all the way up to T. Higgins. Like even Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Coker, Isaac Tesla, Keon Coleman, Jalen Knoll, Chisholm, and Ryan Flournoy. Even I like Ryan Flournoy. But on the roster like this, Ryan Flournoy doesn't work for this roster. Ryan Flournoy is perfect as your wide receiver 5. The problem is we're rostering, what do we have here, 11 receivers? And part of that is there's just too many roster spots, right? There's 35 roster spots. So that's the result of having too many roster spots. We're just rostering anything. Efton Chisholm, Jalen Knoll, Keon Coleman. There's no plan with these guys. But then you look at our top 4 receivers, Neighbors, Rice, Burden, Higgins. That's great. In fact, because receiver is so devalued in the flex here, if I just trim the fat after these 4, I become hyper efficient. Now, I'm pretty fragile because I only have these 4, and I definitely would want to have a couple tight ends to make up in the flex, which I don't. And I definitely would want more running backs that can score points, which I don't. But this is the inefficiency. So one piece of advice here is, can I convert these? You're not going to be able to convert these guys to usable assets per se. Can I convert them to something else? Can I combine them with a pick to move to something else? Can I go buy a tight end for Brandon Ayuk? Can I go add 212 to Jalen Coker and get another tight end? And I'm not even talking like great tight ends. Can I get Mark Andrews? Can I get Dallas Goedert? Can I get that level of tight end? Because that will play in the flex. Even if I get 3 of those guys. Remember, I have to start 2. The problem is the trade market is probably going to be a little rough at tight end. I'm guessing because it's start 2, it's not that easy to go and just get one of those guys for cheap. So you're really going to have to thread the needle. But what I want is I want to add a couple tight ends that are flex worthy. The problem is we don't have any. We have Cade Stover and Tyler Conklin. We literally have 2 guys because we're required to start 2 guys for a lineup. But that's it. They're probably really close to zeros. So that's the first spot to work. You're taking Jeremiah Love, 103. Listen, the problem with 103 is it's probably best player available, and it's probably either a quarterback or a receiver with this class. Quarterback, we haven't really talked about it, but with Jaden Daniels, Cam Ward, Kyler Murray, Malik Willis, you're also on the fence here. You're playing the any quarterback on a 2 deep game, but you don't have to because you have 4 starters. I mean, this team really landed softly with Kyler and Malik Willis where they are today, plus Cam Ward, plus Jaden Daniels. So this is a spot you definitely have excess from. You could sell Cam Ward. You could sell Kyler Murray. I think both of those guys you can move. Malik Willis, probably harder to move with the Waddle trade, but I'm trying to keep Malik Willis as my QB3. And really, I only have 2 of these 4 backups that are probably valuable backups. I know Trubisky might be a backup. Aiden O'Connell might be a backup, but they might not be. So you're not too far in the weeds at the any quarterback build to where I feel bad about cutting the trim or cutting the fat there. So you have an excess asset to move from QB. So it's probably really about seeing what you can do with these picks. Unfortunately, this is a class where you might be stuck taking some rookie tight ends, 110, 201. I'm guessing both Sadiq and Stowers could be gone at the 110, but if they're there, or Stowers is there probably, like that's the pick. I don't love a rookie tight end necessarily for trying to move towards competing, but at the same time, this is the type of roster you would take him with that pick. His ADP in a 2 tight end, 2 PPR league should really be like, that should be your 106, 107. So this team is hoping for Omar Cooper, KC Concepcion, an RB2 to go in the second round. This is the team that wants 2 more first-round receivers and Jadarian Price in the second round and Ty Simpson in the first round. That way your 110, 201 are just better options, right? You probably have a little more steam to trade those. So you got to be looking with that. 103 is a tough spot. Honestly, you could argue taking Sadiq at 103. The problem is you probably don't have to. So I would try to move back. Can you get a package for 103? Because what I don't need to do is take another receiver, even if it's the wide receiver 1 in the class. Like, even if it's the best receiver in the class, assuming Mendoza goes 102, I don't need to add the best receiver in this class to Higgins, Burden, Rice, and Neighbors. And you may say that's BPA, I'm just going to draft it and worry about it later. Fine. But now I'm pretty much at my max at receiver. I have 5 top 20 receivers. I need to get rid of all of these guys if I want to move towards some efficiency. So you have some work to do with this roster. The good news is you have a lot of picks. You haven't traded your future picks. You have 4 quarterbacks. You already have Genty. You already have Harvey. You already have an NERB on a 53 kind of built out. Keep adding to that. Again, I probably want to see this number with 35-man rosters. I want to see this number at about 15, maybe even higher. That's the number that you can expand because you're not going to carry. This isn't a team that needs to carry 10 quarterbacks. So get more of the running backs as you can. Given that your weakness is RB, you only literally have Harvey and Genty, and then you're going to add Love. But because it's the dominant flex, I probably want a rotation of 7 or 8 running backs that I can play because I want to be playing a running back in the flex every time that I possibly can, especially given the other position I can play there is one of these receivers and tight ends that I don't have. So it's going to be tough to flex tight ends, and you're trying to go slim at receiver, so you got to make up the number at running backs. So that's a fun build. That is what you're in for if you get into one of these crazy leagues, start 11, start 12, with bonuses for everything. Like, it's just, there's so much going on, you really have to pick your lane. But if you noticed, picking your lane and really leaning into it in that league where other people may not know exactly how to value stuff, that's where the edge is. The edge isn't, oh, I know running backs are more valuable here. They are, but pretty much when all the premiums are what they are and there's all these 40-yard bonuses and 102-yard bonuses and first down bonuses, all the points are going to be higher. So it's really about where do I find the edges in efficiency, and that's where the construction comes into play. So Soggy Danger, I appreciate that submission. That was a fun one to start with. That's going to be a tough one to live up to for the rest of the night. But we're going to get to roster number 2. You're welcome, my friend. Code Red. This is roster number 2. So Code Red, this is a contender. This is a good team that we're going to be reviewing. Now, one thing that I noticed, it is a 12 by 11. I mean, goodness gracious, everyone. Look at this. When you click on the league and you see this bar graph. Of course, we're this team. So this is kind of one of those pay to brag, right? I mean, this is just crazy. I don't even know what the players, I haven't even looked. What are the assets? What are the players? No idea. But when you see this, I mean, just the discrepancy, the position of strength that you are playing from compared to everybody else, it's going to take, you literally need to get locked out of your phone and not have access to Sleeper for like 2 years before this team will completely fold, right? Now, you can lose. Doesn't mean you can't lose. It's a week-to-week game. There's a lot of variance. But when you see this, it's kind of like just don't screw it up. If you just don't screw it up, it's going to be hard for this team to fail. But let's get into the details of it. So it's a start 11, 12 by 11, 38 roster spots. I don't know what the obsession with having so many roster spots is. But this is another one that with the taxi, we're at 38. I'm not going to go on that rant, but man, if you only have a start 11, you can't have 38 roster spots. It's too many. You're going to force this. 157 receivers rostered. Why is there 157 receivers rostered? Well, I don't know, because there's nothing else to roster, and Sleeper says I can go up to 38. So let me just add that wide receiver 17 to my team. Because why not? It says I can go that high. So cut this down. I mean, 77 QBs. Again, there's no edges in working the waivers here. Just because there's already almost 80 quarterbacks rostered. That's half the league's third stringers are already on teams. So what you have is what you have at QB. But let's look at the setup. Make sure we're looking at 3 receivers here. Yes. No, only 2. So it's 1, 2, 2, 1. 4 flexes and a super flex. So when I see 4 flexes and then I see 2 and 2, looking at the scoring, really all I care about, 6 minus 2, so we know it's 6 point per passing touchdown league. I can't even go through the specifics on this. This is just another one of these leagues where it's just let's tweak every possible scoring category and give it something. So, I mean, we have receptions between 0 and 4, you get a quarter point. Between 5 and 9, you get a quarter point. 10 and 19, you get an extra 0.5. And then you got bonuses here. You got an extra 0.5 for tight end premium. You have 1.25 PPR for running backs or for receivers. I believe that's right. Rushing first downs, 0.25. See if there's anything else that I'm missing. Nope. -3 for a pick 6. And then all the bonuses. So here's what he says. Empire League that I won in year 5 with back-to-back titles, after which all teams' championships reset, but rosters stay the same. What's the point of an Empire League if it resets, but rosters stay the same? I mean, if I was this league, I would just go on a mutiny and be like, the rosters have to reset, man. I mean, look at this team. Look at this team. So last year, you did lose in the championship. He lost in the championship. Code Red lost in the championship last year. I forgot to give a shout out to Code Red. He lost in the championship. So the team is beatable. But he has extra 27 picks. Good God. No, my team is good, but unsure how to proceed with a mid to low activity league. Well, Code Red, first of all, congrats on building a team like this. I don't blame the league for not being that active because, I mean, how is this not a super team? Rank 1 overall, rank 1 starter. We are ranked 1 in every position except for tight ends. Our tight end room apparently is awful, according to Dynasty Daddy, but we still have Dalton Kincaid and Zach Ertz. So it isn't like this team has no tight ends. I mean, I've seen worse tight end rooms. So It's just a team where you're playing from excess. I mean, you have Caleb Williams as your QB3. And then, oh yeah, I have Kyler Murray and Malik Willis just kind of chilling there. Just not sure what exactly to do here. You say in the chat 109, 111, 112. I mean, put it this way. I'm going to let the chat chime in on different things you could do with this team. I mean, obviously, Genty, Gibbs, Achane, Hampton, Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams, David Montgomery, Tyler Algier, Jalen Warren, and Blake Corum. It's a pretty good RB room there. Goes 10 deep with top 35 running backs. That's pretty solid. When T. Higgins is your wide receiver 7, that's pretty solid. You have Marv and Higgins and Rashee Rice, and they're wondering, do we ever get to play? In fact, I might. I don't want to turn this into a joke, but I almost would go to one of the teams and just be like, "Hey, I'll pay your buy-in, and I'll start my second half of my team, and I'll try to compete with that team." I mean, looking at the WAR, yeah, you're gonna see. I'll get rid of the QB scoring. Clearly, RB WAR it's a little bit higher than the receivers. Not too much, but it's only start 2 receiver, right? So that's going to make the strength in the flexes. That's one of the reasons the receiver WAR is going to be a little bit higher, because you only have to start 2. So that replacement value, it's going to be a little higher, because when you get to the flexes, you're only starting 2 versus 3. So it makes sense how you're constructing between these 3 positions, but I don't really have any advice for you, man. I mean, I hate to say it, but you have so many assets that really the only thing you probably have to do is, because you literally have 2 teams worth on this roster. I could split your running backs in half and build, if I take Gibbs and Hampton and then Genty and Achane and split them up and then divvy up the other 5, 6 startable running backs that you have and just break them in, you have 2 running back rooms, basically. Receivers, same thing. I mean, you got like Jaden Reed as your wide receiver 8. I'm not even going to count him. But between the top 7 receivers, you have 7 of the top 20 receivers in Dynasty, top 24. Not to mention an extra 27 first, plus 3 first this year. I mean, you're really just trying to push as many of these extra pieces to the far, far future. And I'm not even going to say what I would do if I was in the league with you. I'll let your league mates figure that out. But I would be sending them trades. What can I give you to get your 28 first? I don't even need to get your 27s. I mean, getting 27s is just greedy. You can try it. What I wouldn't do, what you don't need to do, is go and pay 200% to get their 27 first. You don't even need to do that. You can try. If you can get that done, fine. But I mean, I'm not going to necessarily go trade like Drake London for a 27 first, because you don't have to. I'd go to the 28s, and I would just say, can I trade T. Higgins for a 28? Can I trade Javonte Williams for a 28? Those types of players. Players that are usable, players that are fine, but players that probably have, a 2-year window. That their value is their value. Their value is their equity of them being used today, and they're not going to hurt you. You're not starting them, and I'm not really afraid of a team that is starting those guys against me. So I'd probably skip a year. Try for the 27s. Your league mates would be absolutely foolish to give you 27 picks. But what I'm not doing is going like, here, I'm going to give you Etienne and Egbuka for your 27 first. You don't need to do that. Find your spots where you can get close to true dynasty value for those picks. But man, I've seen some ridiculous rosters. I mean, chime in the chat. This is one of the more ridiculous teams that I've ever seen. In a start 11, I mean, we have 5 starting quarterbacks. We have literally 10 top 35 running backs. If you count Warren and Corum, they're right there. Algier. We have 7 top 24 receivers. And I'm counting just the flexes, right? And we have 2 tight ends that are playable. And it's not a start 2 tight end, so I really don't even care about the flex equity of the tight end after my starter. Hunter Henry, fine. He's just a backup to my starter. And Kincaid's still a top 12 tight end. I mean, you're literally 22 deep, and that doesn't even account for the fact that you have an extra 27 first, and you have 3 first this year. I know they're not high, but this team is literally 25 top, 150, 120 assets deep, maybe even top 100. It's a ridiculous team. One of the best teams I've ever seen. put together. Yeah, I don't know. Shane can attest, I know he's not in here, but we get roster reviews every once in a while from people that are in leagues with teams that are not as good as this, but teams that are super teams. Teams where it's like, man, this team is just absolutely bludgeoned people for years. How would you even go about competing with this team? If you're one of the other teams, I'm not even going to go through every team, but if you're just one of these teams that's down here, I don't even want to look at this team. I don't see, how can it be? Ugh. Like, if you're this team, what can you do? What can you do? You have nothing. You have your own picks. But you have nothing to build around. Your best player is J.K. Dobbins, Sam Darnold. Those are your two best players. I mean, there's nothing you could do. So I would just continue to see what I can get done. Push my value to the future. Keep it flexible. You have plenty to win. Funny thing is, this team lost last year. Didn't win the championship because ultimately, just because you're 25 deep, you can only start 11. And if somebody else has 8 strong and they get lucky with a couple starting spots, in a 1-game week, they can beat you. But just ridiculous roster. Congrats, Code Red. One of the best teams I've ever seen. I think most people in here will agree with that. Number 3, we got Boyan. Thank you for the submission. Boyan, let's see. Okay, so Boyan's team, we got another 12 by 12 this time. And I have to give kudos because 12 by 12, we're starting a tight end, 3 running backs, 4 receivers, a quarterback, 2 flexes, and a super flex. So 12 by 12 definitely increases the scarcity with start 3 running backs and start 4 receivers. Tight ends is only 1. We'll look at the premiums in just a second, but definitely that comes into play. But what I love most is this league only has 14 bench spots. So 12 by 12, but only 26 total roster spots. He does say they're expanding to 30. I don't think you need to expand to 30. If it's already been voted on, fine. But 12 by 12 with 26, I guarantee you, if you do 12 by 12 with 26, there will be a couple things that are true. Every player rostered, for the most part, will have some value. Doesn't mean you want to pay it, but they'll have some value. There'll also be some value on waivers. In a 12 by 12, there will be some players on waivers that you want. Fab will matter in that league. Waiver priority, bidding will matter. So I tend to like that. Even in start 12, I'm fine with 28. 30 is right around that number that I recommend, the 40%, but it doesn't have to be. Anything lower just kind of makes it even more fun with the current markets. So let's look at the scoring. Looks like it's 6 minus 4 here. Yeah, 6 minus 4, so definitely hindrance to passing interceptions here. And then 0.15 point per carry. Yep, there it is, 0.15 point per carry. And it's an extra point tight end premium. So I really like this because you're fighting against a couple different things, right? It's start 3 running backs, and it's point per carry. So right there, when you look at this, automatically you're going to see, let's get rid of the QB scoring here for a second. You're going to clearly see the running back dominance here. And the fact that you have to start 3. If you know anything about just weekly, just typical scoring in a fantasy week at running back, it's usually around like 40 running backs or so that are going to hit that flex number. Here, 36 of them have to be in lineups because you have to start 3. So you're going all the way out to here. And this is going to be a little more true to what's actually captured because the league has to start 3. So you're getting your starters all the way out to here. Now, receivers are going all the way out to here. So because you have to start 4 receivers, your receiver flexes don't even start until once you get below this part. So it's definitely pressuring the flexes a little bit more. Tight ends are really valuable in the flexes here. Tight ends are definitely valuable because it's also 2 PPR, but you're going to notice that those tight ends that are in this range, right? So the tight end 13 through, let's even call it 30. Those are going to be more valuable in the flexes here. Doesn't mean they're more valuable overall because the scarcity is going to be driven by your running backs and receivers because you have to start 3 running backs and 4 receivers. So you got to have those locked in. But then when you're talking about excess, the excess is probably going to be more expensive at those two positions. Because I'm in some point per carry 3 running back leagues. They're really hard to get. Almost impossible. You can't just go, I'll send a second for Ramondre Stevenson. Doesn't work that way. The person that has him knows he's not worth a first, knows you're not going to pay a first, but once somebody has them, you have to pay to basically disrupt their running back room. You're paying for that scarcity. And so that's where the flexes come into play. I'd almost say if I can lock these positions down, unless I can get excess running backs, I'm never going to have a problem finding excess receivers past here, right? I can go 60, 70 deep at receiver. So I'm always going to be able to have a wide receiver 5, 6, 7 that just kind of lingers on my team. Those are not going to be a scarce thing. We know that. These are going to be the key, though. Finding these tight end flexes, because when you're comparing these in here, just call it tight end 13 through 24, to these receivers down here, you're going to want to go with the tight ends for the most part. So going back to your team, this is where the roster space comes into play. This is why I think having it at 26 would be a little more fun, because you really have to be tight with your numbers. So let's look at the tight ends at first. So one of the things that I noticed, Boyan, is your tight ends are pretty bad. A.J. Barner's your starter. Your other 3 tight ends, the problem, do any of these tight ends, I'll ask the chat, do any of these 4 tight ends right here fit that flex range? Yes or no? Elijah Arroyo, Darnell Washington, Mike Gesicki, Dawson Knox. I don't think so. None of those guys really, I'm sitting here going, man, that's a flex. So really you're just rostering them as like backups, but I only need 1 if they're not in that flex range. Maybe you could see 1. I could see Mike Gesicki. I could see Elijah Arroyo. Now you have A.J. Barner, so probably not Elijah Arroyo if you also have A.J. Barner as your starter. But Gesicki's the only one where you're like, wow, if he gets, I mean, he's had a bunch of years of 50, 60 catches. Like, that's what he's got to get into that flex range, though. So unless you're betting on that, you really are overinflating your tight ends here. You have too many tight ends, and none of them are usable. So that's an inefficiency that you had. What you said about your team was contender last year, thinking about moving away from that direction, though. This team feels stuck in a mediocrity cycle despite having good pieces. I want to acquire more draft capital and shed some older players, but unsure how to approach it. So in terms of, you don't have any picks this year. I mean, you have 2/4. I see what you're talking about. You know, one of the things that I notice here is you're going with kind of the streaming receiver game because you have to start 4. But my struggle with this team, Boyan, is there isn't really anything to build around. There's individual players, but there really isn't a position group where I go, you know what? That group is so good that it is going to be my spot where I really, really make it efficient, and then I have some leeway at the other spots. You really have all 4 positions like that, and that's probably why it feels like it's stuck in this cycle. Because your QB room, you have Dart, and then you have a couple other options between Darnold and Stafford. And then you have a couple backup QBs. Shador might get some starts. But like, for instance, Dylan Gabriel, that's just a wasted roster spot. I didn't look at the quarterback numbers. What are we at? 63? Okay, so 63 means that it's probably, to a degree, a product of that 26 roster spots. So I'm guessing there's going to be some QBs that are available. So if you wanted to shed one of these QBs, that might be a place I start. Matt Stafford, what can I move him for? He seems like the perfect player to try to trade and split. I don't want to get 26 picks probably, but can you move Matt Stafford for one of those undesirable picks in the first round this year? Probably can't get a 27. Probably not going to get a starter that you're building around because it's still Matthew Stafford. But I think you could move from excess. Given there's probably going to be a couple backup QBs available to get, you could live with Dart and Darnold and then 4 or 5 backups. I could live with that. The problem is when you look at these other positions, you have to start 4 receivers, but your start 4 receivers are really good. Xavier Worthy is your 5, and then you're just rostering a bunch of guys. So if I was going to go with volume at receiver, let's say I was going to roster 12 receivers. You're close to it. I think you're at 12. If I was going to roster 12 receivers, I would want these other positions to be more efficient. But instead, your tight ends aren't efficient either. Your running backs are, and it's hard. It's why people in a startup, when you have this type of format with start 3 running backs, people will just draft them higher. Because once you don't have them, you're relying on the draft to get them. Like, you can't just go get a Jaylen Warren. To get a Jaylen Warren, like, it's not crazy to say I need your 27 first for Jaylen Warren. And that's just probably not what you want to spend it on. But you really don't have a path to go find even another Jalen Warren, let alone Judkins or somebody better than that. So even getting RBs in this range that would fill out your flexes in this format, it's almost impossible because you don't already have them. So the next pivot is you're forced to go, well, I'm going to roster any RBs on a 53, which you've started to do. But then that combats with your strategy of rostering any quarterback on a 53. Then it combats your strategy of, well, I need to roster extra receivers because I have to start 4. You see this cycle you're chasing? You're chasing every position to try to play it like a streaming position because you're kind of inefficient and don't really have the depth at any of the 4. So my advice would be picking one of those lanes and shedding a quarterback and adding a strength. So let's say I can trade Matt Stafford for the 110, just hypothetical, okay? I trade Matt Stafford for the 110, and I draft best player available. Let's say it's a running back or a receiver. You might get Omar Cooper, Casey Concepcion if they're first-round picks. They might be there. RB2 might be there. Those are realistic names that would be there. Now, whether those players are hits or whether they're good, I don't know. But at least if you added one of those guys, you could say you're starting to build out one of these 2 positions, which would give you some freedom to not carry as many cloggers, and you could build out this quarterback room a little more creatively with some of the backups that you know are available. So I think that's what you need to do. I don't think you have enough value here. Sure, you can go sell Christian McCaffrey and try to split them. You know, that's what we tell you to do on a roster review. What can we split? What can we split? But aside from splitting, I think you have to really pick a lane based on this format. And for me, given your receiver core, like your receiver core is pretty good. Right? I mean, yeah, A.J. Brown's getting up there a little bit, but I think this receiver core could last multiple years. That's probably where I'm leaning as my efficient point. If I can get a 6th receiver, let's say I can draft a receiver in the 1st this year, I'm done. Which means all of these are excess. Now, any of these guys, can I trade them for anything? Maybe Keon Coleman. Can I get a 3rd? Can I get a 4th? 4th for Ryan Flournoy? Anything for Keenan Allen? But this is where your relief comes. And I add tight ends that fall to waivers. I add backup quarterbacks. I add more RBs on a 53. But you have to free yourself some spots. Otherwise, you're just inefficient at every position, and it feels like I don't have enough roster spots to keep up. I want to roster 15 receivers. I want to roster 10 quarterbacks. I want to roster 12 running backs. You just don't have enough spots because you only have 30. I mean, if 26 would make it even harder. So because you're working with kind of limited spots, even in a start 12, it's very important that you kind of pick a lane for efficiency here. So, Boyan, appreciate you submitting the team. Thank you. Dustino, you are up next. So this is roster number 4. Put it in the chat here. Okay, so Dustino's roster. This is a 12 by 11, 29-man rosters. I like that. 12 by 11, 29, 6-2 quarterback scoring. Hopefully we don't have those crazy bonuses here. We don't. Thank you. Fairly normal league, 6-2. We have 2 PPR for tight ends, so we got the extra point bonus for tight ends, but nothing else crazy. There's no point per carry, nothing. And this was an orphan that Dustin adopted. So let's go up here and look at the setup. 3 receivers, tight end, quarterback, 2 running backs. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 3 flexes and a super flex, and then 14 bench plus a taxi, 29 total. So everything looks good there. First thing that stands out, obviously, it's 6 point per passing touchdown, only 62 QBs rostered. So we know we can exploit that. This number is actually pretty low, too, for a 2 PPR. Only 49 tight ends rostered. So not knowing anything else about your league, I will just tell you, receivers are over-rostered here. You're looking at an average of like 11.5 per team. Almost 12 receivers per team. It's a little over 11 per team. It's too many. So that's something that you can probably exploit. So you said this is an orphan that you took over. So let's take a look at the team. Took over an orphan, needs retooling, aiming to compete by 2027, leaning into the tight end premium, but may need to move one. Planning to take a wide receiver at 4. Okay. So going to the war real quick. Just want to highlight, you're going to see this a lot in 6 point per passing touchdown leagues. You're going to see the density be a little higher for tight ends or for quarterbacks. Also, you're going to notice the 2 PPR pushes the tight ends up. So we'll remove the quarterbacks here for a second. 2 PPR is going to push the tight ends up. And there's no other bonuses, right? So no point per carry. There's no first down bonuses, no reception bonuses, nothing like that. So pretty much it's easy to evaluate the flexes and say receivers and tight ends are going to have similar value in the flexes, and there's no point per carry. So those are going to be probably the easier options to obtain than running backs. Let's get back to the team here. And you did add some extra context in the chat, so let me read that. A backup QB build. Going to use open roster spots to add a few more. Waivers open after the rookie draft. Sent an offer out weeks ago to get Tua for my 26 thirds. The manager expressed interest, but is MIA. We'll start adding usable ones at the end of the roster once roster comes together. Okay. So I like that plan. I think given your quarterback room with T-Law, Shador, this is definitely one in the short term. In 2026, I'm accumulating backups. That's one of your homework pieces for 2026. Accumulate backups. Because if you want to have that build, don't worry about the QB2 quite yet because you're okay pushing this out another year, right? But accumulate some of those backups. The ones you can get for free, there should be some you could get for free because there's not that many rostered. The number was pretty low. So add them. People will drop them. You have a year buffer to just start accumulating them. Looking at the tight end premium, I mean, there's a couple that you could move. You could certainly move George Kittle if he comes back. Kincaid, Brenton Strange, Chigakonkwo. You are oversaturated there, but I do think if we're counting that flex threshold, it's going to be, I mean, here's how you calculate it, just for those that haven't seen it before. It's start 3 receivers. So you're looking at the receivers that are down in this range after the top 36. So right below that range for the season, you're looking at about 0.48 for the running backs. Right below RB24, you're looking at 0.51. So very similar there. And where do those numbers line up at tight end? Right here, tight end 13. Tight ends are higher. So right here, you're at tight end 18 is basically equivalent to the first receiver and running back in the flex. So you can flex tight ends all the way down out to like that next 12 or so in this format, given the scoring of the other two positions. So I think you're there. Unlike the tight end room we just looked at, I think you're there. Like all 5 of these tight ends, I could tell a story where they're all within that threshold or higher. So you have an excess there. So that's going to be one of your things you have to kind of monitor the market. You don't have to move them today. You can wait on a guy like Kittle or somebody like Chig because you haven't seen him play yet. But that's a spot where you can move one. I totally agree with you moving one. But I wouldn't stress like I have to do it right now. What I'm not doing is moving one to address a need at these other positions. Like this is a strength. It's a strength that the league should allow you to lean into to a degree, but I don't have to rush to get whatever I'm going to need to get right now. One of the reasons is your other positions are pretty much just lacking entirely. So this is probably a premier roster that's going to be picking very high next year. So I'm actually okay kind of just leaving things as they are, working on finding deals for anything that I don't project to be usable in 2027. It's okay to work it out. You're already efficient enough where you can start backfilling. You know, RB is the position where if I can continue to add guys as the season goes on, they have a higher likelihood of carrying over to the next year in a range that they're usable. With the receivers here, because the receivers are, I don't want to say diminished, but you only need a certain amount of receivers given how good your tight ends are, and you're probably carrying at least 2 of those tight ends or more into next year. Probably 3, maybe even 4. So I don't need more than 5 receivers on this team. So really I'm looking at what receivers can survive the year and still fit into that threshold that I'm looking for. It's probably Lamb and Burden. Everyone else just kind of they're in a streamable range year to year, and you don't need them this year, so they can go. So this is the kind of team. The potential points hack here is, can I trade Trey Harris? Can I trade Deebo Samuel? Can I trade Shamir DK? Can I trade Kayshon Boutte? Knowing that I'm already strong at receiver, that's going to fill my flexes in the future. My plan is going to be flexing a couple of these tight ends, which means I don't need 7 receivers. And you're taking a receiver at 104, which is probably the right pick in this format. All these guys will actually help my potential points by going away. So can I get more seconds next year? Can I get thirds next year? You're already building that. You already have an extra second. You already have 2 extra thirds, an extra fourth, etc. Like that's next offseason is where you're really going to start paying to backfill your construction. Because if you add a QB next year, you have the 101 or the 102, like you're probably in a spot where next year you're at least on your way up. But to be on your way up, you need to have some assets that are going to allow you to lean into, I need more usable running backs next year. I'm going to need one more receiver probably. So keep flexible, and the spots that you can just add with empty roster spots for in the season is probably going to be QBs and running backs. So add here, subtract here, trade for extra value here at tight end, and you're on your way to getting to at least a point where you're super efficient by 27. But then by 27, it's about just accumulating points and working your way up. So appreciate the submission, Dustin. Thank you. Number 5, we got Them Is Fit. This is Darren or Durain. I'm not sure how to say the name, so I'll just say Durain. This roster is, let me close out Dustin's real quick. All right, so this roster, a 12 by 11. We've had a lot of 12 by 11 tonight. That seems to be the format. 12 by 11, 30-man rosters. Going up here to the starting requirements. Notice I have to check this every time. So we have a 2 tight end league. Quarterback, 3 receivers, 2 running backs, 2 tight ends, 2 flexes, a super flex, and 15 bench. Taxi included, we're at 4 taxi. So 12 by 11, 30-man rosters. I think there's some point per carry in this one as well. It is 6 minus 2.5 for interceptions. So, okay. 6 minus 2.5. And then we have some funky scoring. Here we go with the funky scoring. It looks like there is negative points for incompletions and positive points for completions. So we'll look at the WAR. But anytime you see that, basically that means every completion is worth double what an incompletion is going to be worth, most likely, because let's just take it 66%. A quarterback is probably going to add 50% more points on completions than they're going to lose on incompletions. So it's just going to favor high-volume passers are very, very valuable here. You think about if a guy goes 30 for 40 in a game, that's going to be a lot of extra points on those completions, and you're really netting 20 extra completion points there. And here, for every 10 completions, you're getting an extra point, 1.5. So that's huge. Like if you get 30 completions in a game and you're not 30 for 60, most likely you're adding like 2 or 3 points per game for those types of QBs. And Durain, I don't know how to say it. He'll have to correct me sometime. He'll let me know. Let me know what it actually is and give me the iteration of how to say it. But pocket passers are more valuable here. So let's get back to the roster here real quick. So looking at what you said, it is, there's some crazy bonuses here. I can't even keep it straight. So we have point per carry, 0.5 rush attempts. I purposely minimized the WAR here real quick because I didn't realize it was 0.5. But 0.5 per carry is ridiculous. I don't need to know anything else. I don't care what the reception bonuses are. It's only 0.25 for receivers, and it's 1.25 for tight end premium. I don't even need to know what those are because it's not going to matter. It's just not going to matter. The only 2 positions that that are just strictly dominant here are going to be quarterbacks and running backs. And boom, there we are. Look at that WAR. Look at that running back scoring. 0.5 per carry is absurd. It's just absurd. That your elite running backs are getting just insane amounts of points. I don't know who made that decision, but if you get, I always ask Shane to do the math. If you get 300 carries, if you're Jonathan Taylor and you get 300 carries, he is getting an extra 150 points just for the carries. Think about that. He is getting as many points for carries as like Jamar Chase is getting if he gets an extra 150 catches. And I know the the extra 0.25 for receiver reception, so that's probably more like 120. But it's just absurd. You would never. This would be one of those startups. We had one of these in Heisman, and if you're not in Heisman, consider jumping in there because I remember talking about this in Heisman where the point per carry was so high. It's going to be so dominant that I would probably only draft running backs to the point where I'm going to bank that the scoring is so absurd that at some point I can just buy myself into replacement level receivers. It might not be right away, But I can always buy myself into like this range of receiver. I'm going to get rid of the quarterback so everyone can see it. I can always buy myself like into this. This is all I'm ever going to need in my league if I have to pay cost, because it's so flat. Look how flat that is at receiver because of how powerful the running backs are. And the reason it's so flat is because all these running backs dominate the flexes. If you looked at the scoring matrix, which is something that I kind of do for myself, and people have probably seen the matrix, running backs would be 12-0 in each flex. That's how dominant they are. So literally receivers are just, oh, sure, I need the 3 to start. And I hope that when I need an extra one to start, I have an extra one. But as long as they fit somewhere in this vicinity, I do not care. So literally, I would just draft all running backs, and I would bank that once I have 15 good running backs, I'll just find my spots where I can go buy, DJ Moore, Michael Pittman. I'll just go find a few of those guys, and I'll always be able to plug those in. So it's an absurd scoring format. Let's go to your team, though, because I want to do your team a little bit of justice just to see how you're built. So, interesting. You won the championship last year. Looking to repeat. Already traded for Derrick Henry, considering sending a 27 first and a third for Saquon. Yes. The only downside to that is, do you have to? Because Saquon's great to have, but you know who's great to also have? Tony Pollard. Anybody that gets carries. I don't care how bad they are. Chris Rodriguez is a stud in this format. Chris Rodriguez probably outscores Chris Olave, and it's not even close. If he gets 180 carries, he's just smashing all your receivers. Like I'm curious if what receiver outscored JSN last year, or what running back outscored JSN, because there's probably a ton of them. So the fun thing is you do have JSN. So even though this isn't dominant, at least your receiver's up here, which actually depressurizes your need for any other receivers. So you're already capturing probably the most WAR at receiver, and you have Drake London, and you have Chris Olave, and you have Jalen Waddle, and you have Wan'Dale Robinson. Forget about these guys. I would cut all these guys immediately. These tight ends. I mean, again, I get it. It's a tight end premium. But again, in this premium, these guys really are just competing with these guys for flex spots. And you don't want to flex anything but running backs. So you just have too many receivers and tight ends here. So that's my homework for you, is how do I get more running backs? Literally, how do I get more J.K. Dobbins, Tyler Algiers? Those are the types I'm going after. So I don't know what you have to do. Quarterbacks are fine. You could probably, if I was you, I'd probably try to get a third QB. I would trade, given this scoring format, I would want to lock in that QB advantage. Remember, with the completion percentage, I would trade any of these receivers for Baker Mayfield. That type of QB. The value being, I have my 3 QBs. I always capture this. I'm always capturing this. I'm banking that my 3 QBs will always capture me this level of QB production, and I'll never miss a week. What I don't want to do is not have a starter. Ever. I never want to have a non-quarterback starter to play. Because if I'm starting a non-quarterback in my Superflex, which currently you only have 2, there's going to be a few weeks where you have that. And you don't have all your quarterbacks built out here. So this is a absolute 3 QB build. I would trade any of your receivers for another Jared Goff, Brock Purdy, Baker Mayfield, Dak Prescott, Trevor Lawrence, CJ Stroud, you name them. I want a third QB. That way I can throw Mac Jones in the trade if you have to. Then I can go super efficient here. I'm already trading from an excess here. And I'm literally just adding as many running backs as I can. You have 30 roster spots. I would roster 20 running backs in this league. No joke. Every roster spot that I can afford that's not basically my starting lineup or immediate backup would be a running back. That's how dominant it is. That's how absurd 0.5 point per carry is. So that's a fun team. That is absolutely a fun team. And just think about if you get into a 0.5 point per carry league and you don't get running backs, like, good luck getting them from me. Yeah, I wouldn't give you I would not give you J.K. Dobbins for Chris Olave. Now, the market may say otherwise. But if you're actually comparing like their short-term production, it's just not going to be close. So see what you can get done. It sounds like the league is not caught up to that, given that you already bought Derrick Henry, that you could get Saquon for a single first. I'm guessing receivers have some value in your league, so can I go move Jalen Waddle or Chris Olave? The ones that I can trade, right? I'm totally fine starting Wan'Dale Robinson as my 3, especially with JSN and Drake London. Literally, with JSN and London, your 3 can be anybody. I don't care who it is. Pick pick Isaac Tesla as your 3. And you just start him every week with Goff. He's probably going to score 8.5 points per game for the season, but you're locking that 8.5 in, and it's not going to impact you if you never flex a non-running back. You're just going to get his points every week. The weeks he has a good week, your team's just going to be even better. So you have excess to trade at receiver. Haven't dipped into your picks, so you have that too. So fun team, fun league, but one of those where if you get behind the ball at running back, it's just almost impossible to keep up. All right, team number 6, Lambo Leapen. I saw him in the chat earlier here, so appreciate the submission. Let's go to the next one. Lambo Leapen, 12 by 10, 30 roster spots with taxi. This is a depressed QB scoring league, so 12 by 10 with 4 point per passing TD, -1 for interceptions, PPR with 1.5 tight end premium. So we've seen the war on these before. So because quarterback's still going to matter a lot, but it's not going to be down here. It's not going to really separate too much. But there's not a lot of premiums, right? There's no point per carry. There's no tight end premium here other than the 0.5. So this is going to be about as standard of a war graph as you're going to see. And so you're not going to want to flex tight ends because once you get into this range of tight ends, you're rather going to have receivers and running backs. So let's go up here and just look at the optics of this league. All right, so we have 2 running backs, 3 receivers, a quarterback, a tight end, 2 flexes, and a super flex, 15 bench spots, 5 taxi, I assume. Yep, Lambo Leapen, this is you. This is you. So team is in a weird spot. I have assets to contend, but not enough to win. I'm deciding whether to sell off pieces before the draft or push to compete potentially and move my 27 first mid-season, looking for guidance on direction. So here's where you stand. Definitely a team where you have some good pieces, but the format is going to be very, very vanilla. So I'm looking immediately like, who are your difference makers? Maybe Kenneth Walker could be one. Derrick Henry, like your receiver room. Anytime you have JSN and you can project him to be, he doesn't even need to be what he was last year, but if he's 20 points per game or more, like that's going to help bring up the other receivers that you have. Like you can live with starting Xavier Worthy or Michael Pittman if you had to in a flex. So here, what I notice is that your roster construction is very inefficient, right? We have 9 receivers on this team. We don't need 9. We have Chris Godwin. Cut it off there. That's 3 roster spots you can buy back. Tight ends. Way too many tight ends. Zach Ertz, cutting him immediately. Daniel Bellinger, cutting him immediately. Theo Johnson, Jatavian Sanders, Cole Kmet. I probably can't get anything for them, but you got to be real creative. Can I send Jatavian Sanders and the 308, and I'm not kidding, 305? Can I send 308 and Jatavian Sanders for a future third? I mean, obviously aim higher, but there's just inefficiencies with your roster construction. That's part of what making you feel like you're not quite a contender. It's a freeing feeling when you become super efficient, and then you say, I don't have enough. Your running backs, I like the way you're building your RBs. I mean, Vidal, Aaron Jones, Tajay Spears, Halani, Taj Brooks, I like that. Add a couple more of those guys at the expense of carrying 6 tight ends and those 3 receiver cloggers. Let's go to the QB number here. I didn't even check what that was. 61. Okay. 61. Perfect. This is a perfect, I'm going to add backup QB build, right? When you have Daniel Jones and Aaron Rodgers as your 2 and 3, you're just praying one of those is starting week 1, which means I want to use a lot of my roster spots on extra quarterbacks. I have a decent start. Milroe, Rattler, Levis, I like that. Probably need like 4 more QBs. I'm okay with that. This is it's not quite roster construction series because usually that's start 11 and it's 175. All that means is I'm going to roster less tight ends and more quarterbacks. So this is absolutely a league where, let's go down here. I know we can't see them all. I mean, dude, Trey Lance, Davis Mills, those are on waivers. Those guys are far, far more valuable than Zach Ertz, Cole Kmet, Daniel Bellinger, Jatavian Sanders, Theo Johnson. So those are easy swap outs. But those are ones where if you have those guys, you're not going to feel any better at QB2 or QB3, but you have more options. All it's going to take is a couple weeks where you get a spot start where at least you have that option. And if you want to trade it because you don't need it, that's fine. But this is actually a team where that's going to come in handy. So that would be my guidance here, would be that efficiency, you need to get to the efficiency first. Then this team, you're going to say, okay, what can I really do with this team? How good is this team? I'm not saying this team is going to go to the very, very top. But if you notice on Dynasty Data, it actually likes your team if you bear it down to starter rank. When you set a lineup for this team, I know it's March. You set a lineup for this team, it's pretty strong. You have a top 8 tight end. You got JSN, which pushes up what you need in those other position or other receiver spots. Like there's not as much pressure on Marv to be top 12 and AJ Brown to be top 12 and Worthy and Pittman and Godwin. Like you're good with those 6. It's not going to be the best in the league, but it's not going to kill you. It's going to be an upper half of the league receiver room. Where you're lacking is the quarterback room, obviously, but you have Jalen Hurts as an anchor, so even better. With Jalen Hurts, if Jalen Hurts is a top 6 QB or better, I don't need another great quarterback. I don't need to go pay for that. I'll bank on Daniel Jones. I'll bank on Aaron Rodgers. I'll bank on some of the other guys that get in there and start. And then running backs, you're always interested in running back bodies on a team like this. And for this reason, you're not flexing tight ends. Running backs are just as good. When a running back is getting opportunity, I know this part of the war is lower for RBs, but that's because this is the season-long war. When a backup running back that's typically in here is a starter for a week, they're up here. This is the range I always look at as to where the flexes are for running backs. It's up in this range. Right? If George Halani's getting a start, he's not down here. If you're starting him, he's probably up here. So that's where your extra spots are going to be dedicated. This is going to be a team where I'm probably going to roster 20 to 22 quarterbacks and running backs. And the reason you can do that is because you already have a good tight end and you already have 6 probable startable receivers. Now, when you're starting to add quality, you have the 108, you have the 112. Like you have some flexibility there. What can you trade those for? Can you add something? Can you add, I don't know, Theo Johnson? The problem is none of your tight ends you can trade. You're not going to be able to trade Theo, Jatavian, Cole Kmet, Daniel Bellinger. Any of those guys could be your backup, and that's fine. Problem is you have 4 of them. So anything you can do to just get another starter asset or 2, I'm fine just letting this team ride. You're going to win with efficiency. You're going to win with having a big week from Henry or Walker or JSN or AJ Brown or Marv or Jalen Hurts or Sam Laporta. Like in a start 10, you have enough high-end firepower for now to get to the table. Doesn't mean you can't trade your 27 first, but I think if you do that by the start of the season, you'll get a true glimpse of where your team is through 6 weeks, through 8 weeks. You can decide. If you're sitting at 6-3 and you're top 3 in points, like that's the spot where you're going, you know what? I'm going to fire my 27 first to try to get another starter. Because then who you're competing with are going to be the other teams that are also efficient and at the higher end. Like this is a pretty good team. I haven't even looked at it. But yeah, Puka, CeeDee Lamb, Loveland, JT, Bucky Irving, Drake May, Jackson. Yeah, that's a good team. That's the kind of team that's probably a step ahead of where you are. So should I look for 2 running backs at 108 or what? No. I'm when I say you need more running backs, I don't mean you need to go draft more running backs. I mean you need to add more running backs. Sure, if you can add another Derrick Henry or Kenneth Walker, fine. But what you need is more running backs like this. Right? Because you're going to trim your receivers down to 6. And one of those is Chris Godwin. One of them is Michael Pittman. You know, we're not talking about like rock solid options here. But you're trimming this down with the plan that I'm going to flex receivers when I get the opportunity to flex them. But I'm going to equally try to flex running backs. So when you go to set your lineup in week 5, you're going to go, man, I need an RB3, maybe an RB4. And just you're going to want to cast a wider net there. So that's why I'm not saying go draft running backs. I'm not saying go trade for running backs unless you think they're good trades. I would send 108 for... I mean, can you get a guy like Javonte or ETN for the 108? Probably not ETN, but Javonte. I think Javonte would be a perfect add to this team. I'd send 108 for Javonte Williams in a heartbeat. That totally changes your outlook. That locks another likely flex in at RB. And it just makes all these picks as just luxuries. I could kick the 112 to a 28 first and be totally fine with it. I could kick the 308 and the 408 to a 27 pick and literally just take the field with what I have and worry about trading my 27 first later. So you're in a good spot. You're in a better spot than you think. I think we think, we need to just go get hammer. But I'm not even starting there. This team will get me to the table. And then I have midway through next year to decide if I really want to be aggressive with trading my 27 first. So thank you for the submission. Appreciate it. Last team. A little over my deadline because, of course, that's how I roll. We're at 9:05, so we're going to hit Trace's team here in the next 6 to 8 minutes, and then we'll finish up here. So Trace's team, this is another 12 by 11. I literally said randomly pick these teams, but you can just tell 12 by 11, 12 by 10, 12 by 12. Crazy-ass scoring bonuses. I mean, welcome to DDFFB. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're in these types of leagues, I mean, it's just a degenerate community because every league, 12 by 11, tiered PPR, massive point per carry. I mean, look at this. 6 minus 2. We got 0.2 point per carry, so it's not the absurd 0.5, but still 0.2. And then we have, look at all these bonuses. We got reception, RB receptions, an extra 0.5. We got, this is probably the foundation. Yeah, there's probably no PPR here, and it's just 0.5, 1, and then 2. So there is no PPR, but you're getting 0.5, 1, and 2. So a tiered PPR with an extra point for tight end premium. You got first down bonuses for everybody, except for quarterbacks is 0.1. So again, that's probably going to favor running backs more here. So right there, knowing nothing else, when I see 0.2 point per carry, and I see equal first down bonuses for all 3 skill positions, we're going to see another league where the running back war is going to be absurdly high in the flex. There we go. And we didn't look at the lineups just to make sure this isn't one of those crazy start 3 running back leagues. Let's just make sure here. So it's 1 tight end, 2 running backs, 3 receivers. Okay, so pretty standard. 1, 2, 3, 1, 3 flexes, and a super flex. So right here. And again, I think when people look at these war graphs, and I know I probably should have said this earlier, but when you look at the war graphs, I use the 3-year average for a season because I think it illustrates the positions a little bit better. And truthfully, the way that we calculate the per game average, all it does is average these numbers divided by the games played, which really isn't correct, right? Like if you think about a running back that's down here, you're not starting them every week. You're not starting them when they're not playing. So on a week, they're going to give you a 0 or even a negative. But for your team, it's a 0 because they're not in your lineup. When you deem a running back startable, you're probably deeming them up in this range, right? I was highlighting that a couple minutes ago. You're deeming a running back startable up in this range, up in that low-end RB2 range. I'm not going to anticipate that. Let's just pick somebody from your roster. I'm not going to anticipate that when Emmanuel Wilson gets a start, that he's up here. But if he's getting a start and I've deemed him flexible, he's probably in this range. So this is the range where you're really kind of comparing the 2 positions. Not down here, up here. So this is where it shows you that running backs are more dominant when you get into this like RB2 flex range. And so you have to consider when you're starting RBs, I don't care what their season-long war is. The reason you roster 15 running backs is because you don't care about their season-long war. You care about the 2 or 3 weeks you could potentially start them. So anyway, let's look at this team. Took over an orphan, already started moving vets for picks. I like that. Currently holding 102, 104, multiple seconds, but struggling to make trades due to league resistance on 27 picks. Yes, this is rough. This is something that I see a lot in the Discord. I think a lot of people that are taking over teams are immediately going, well, this team isn't good enough to win, so let me retool. Perfect. I'll go trade everything. Oh, I can't get 27 picks because people are holding on to those like vice grips. So then what do? The easy thing is to go to 28. The definite thing is to shed any excess that you can't trade. It's diminishing value to you. Like it, even if you're sitting here, I mean, I'm looking at a player on your team like Darnell Mooney, right? So Darnell Mooney on the Giants, he's been pretty good in the past. So he's probably not usable. He's probably not tradable. The only time he's probably tradable is in the season when somebody sees that, oh, he's getting used a little better than I thought. Maybe I can start him. Now, this is a start 11, but you'd have to go through that analysis with Darnell Mooney. It's funny, you have Darnell Mooney and Calvin Austin. You go through the analysis with both of those players specifically and say, I'm purposely holding on to them for that window in the season. If someone goes, oh man, I like those guys now, their Trinity is 5.8 and they're the wide receiver 2 on their team, sure, I can move them for a third. But that's the best thing you're hoping for. That's the only out, is somebody gives me something. Instead, you could just say, I'm just going to cut him. Like, even you having to wait 6 months for Darnell Mooney to play his first couple games, and then you go, I pray somebody would give me a third. What's that worth? So I would try that, try to grind, try to add, Darnell Mooney to the 205 and get the 203. I mean, literally little things like that. But if you're getting resistance on trading most of your players and then you're trying to get 27 thirds, fourths, seconds, and no one will even move those, just cut them. You can throw the league, you can kind of throw the league into a little bit of a fit where you start dropping players they're not used to seeing get dropped. Just cut Calvin Austin. And Mooney and Austin are interesting because I do think there's opportunity potentially for them. It's probably one or the other, to be honest, but there's opportunity for them. So I like the fact that they're both on the same team. They're both probably going to fight for opportunity, and if one of them gets it, I could see you being able to flip one of those guys. All these other guys can go. I mean, these are guys, when I took over this orphan, I would have these guys cut before my sleeper league, before my sleeper team was even added in the draft order. These guys would be cut. Noah Fant would be cut. I just immediately cut him. I can't stand having those types of players on the team. So I'd trim my roster down to like 12 players. And then I would start working with what I have. And you got to be creative. Like, you probably want to take some picks in this draft. It is a point per carry league. This is probably a league where you could do worse than drafting a couple of those second and third tier RBs in the second, because if you're right and you do end up with even a Trey Benson, it's funny, you have Caleb Johnson. I can see why the person orphaned this team. I mean, pretty much every running back they have got completely obliterated. Caleb Johnson, Trey Benson, Devin Neal, Jaden Blue. I mean, if you're right on a couple of these guys and they just have a role, though, like, that's valuable. So I'd take a couple of these shots. I'd probably take those shots at the 209, 212, 302, and 305, though. You know the deals you could probably trade for 27 seconds? These picks, right? These picks right here are probably the ones you have a chance to move. Doesn't feel good giving up the 202 for a 27 second, but if you want to do it, that's probably how you get a couple 27 picks. Not here. Not 212, not 302. There's going to be a point where you just have to pick what's fitting the format. So other than that, other options I would have for you, I mean, you're in a decent spot at the top, right? You already have a foundation of Purdy and Caleb. I love that. I love that in this format. Like, you can build around that. You can build around both those guys. That's going to be a 3-year QB window probably. So you don't need to disrupt that. Now, if you need to pull from that bank to create a little extra value in the future, fine. But I don't think you have to. I mean, could you pivot from Brock Purdy to the 102 and get an extra second? Does the team that's about to draft Mendoza, are they fine going to Brock Purdy? Would they prefer having somebody that produces? Like, that'd be the type of deal I would do in a league like this, because it doesn't really disrupt your build. You're still building around 2 good quarterbacks, assuming Mendoza's good. And then you have Neighbors, and you have Ted, and you have Tyler Warren. Like, this team isn't awful. That's probably why you took it, because it has the 102, and I just noticed you have the 102. So with that, I mean, that gives you even more flexibility to pivot off a QB. Other options that you have here, just to highlight, I'm not scared to take Mendoza on this team either. I know that is not a popular build for a lot of people. You ask Shane about taking Mendoza on this team, oh, hell no, I'm not doing that. But here's the thing, like, this is not a wide receiver friendly format. It's not. It's 2 PPR for tight ends. It's point per carry. Receivers matter. You get your receivers and you get out. So sure, if you can nail whatever receiver is going to be the Tet McMillan or better in this class, then take them. But this is also the type of QB scoring. Let's go back to the war just to highlight it. This is the type of QB scoring. I'll take Mendoza. Yeah, Shane's in the league. I see that. I will take Mendoza. Guess what? I have my 3 QBs. I never need to play in the backup waters. Let's look at the number. 66. Okay. About moderate. The value you're getting in taking Mendoza here is not, of course, you can't start Mendoza over Caleb and Purdy. The value you're getting is in a point per carry. The leakage is probably going to be at running back. And I've just freed myself of 3 to 5 to even up to 7, 8 roster spots because I have 3 QBs. So I'm not saying take Mendoza, but don't eliminate it because you already have Caleb and Purdy and you think you need receivers. Because you could always move one of your QBs. If Mendoza is as good as Purdy or better, you can always move a QB for something else. But the power is having the 3. And we see a lot of these 6-point per passing touchdown leagues with some passing bonuses where I want 3 QBs. It's become so saturated with the backup QBs, I don't need to play in those waters anymore. I'll just get my 3 and get out. And what I gain on the back end by having all those extra roster spots, especially in a year where you're not contending, that is gold. So that's the route I would go. Try to get efficient at the other spots. You have plenty of picks to work. You're going to have to make some picks in 2026. You just are. Excuse me. You're going to have to make some picks. You have too many of them. I noticed some of the names in the league. I see Kittle's Crew's in the league. You said Shane is in the league. I see Dynasty Scaredy's in the league. I mean, you're not going to find this group to just hand you a bunch of 27 picks for these 26s. They're too sharp. So you're probably going to have to make some picks, but just understand the construction. Understand the way that you're building. And knowing that you have Neighbors and Tet and maybe even Michael Wilson, like you don't need to go buy more receivers. Because again, receivers are not the flexes here. You're going to be able to go into next year, and I know your running back room is completely barren, which is a reason that I want to free those roster spots up. But you're going to go into next year, and you're going to go, man, if I have some Tajay Spears types running back, those are better flexes than Michael Wilson. So Michael Wilson's your wide receiver 3. That's perfect. What you don't want is a roster where it's like, man, Michael Wilson's my wide receiver 6. And I drafted a receiver at 102 and 104. The fact that you have 104, you're probably taking a receiver at 104. That's going to be best player available. So consider what you can do for those picks, but just kind of understand the build and where you can build this out. Ignore the player names. You're going to get there. I'm never worried about not getting there at receiver unless it's a specific format and I don't have any good receivers. But here you have Neighbors, you have Tet, you have Wilson, you have the 104 and the 27 first. You're fine. Hell, there might even be another receiver that you take at 202, 204. I wouldn't recommend it, but if you really liked, you have the extra picks to take one here. So I appreciate the submission, Trace. It's a fun team. Always fun to take over an orphan and try to rebuild it. I think you can. I know you have some sharp managers in here, but you also have some stubborn managers, I think, that will still just play it their way. So consider leaning into that. Really be the roster construction person in here. I'm sure there'll be a couple people that are competing with you for that, but really understand that and use this year to your advantage when you're tanking for a season, knowing that you took over the orphan. So thank you, everybody that submitted teams tonight. It was fun. Soggy Danger, Code Red, Boyan, Dustino, Deisfit, Lambo, Leapen, and Traced. If you want a formal roster review, Chill15 is the promo code. You can get it at ddfantasyfootball.com, but jump in our Discord. I'm going to try to do these every single week. This is version 7.0. And until next time, thank you to all the participants. And if you want your roster rescued, get in here. Thanks.